Hi, I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. Welcome to a really exciting edition of Kibitzing with Kagan. My very special guest today is Joy Thomas Moore, who I hope and expect is going to be the first mom of Maryland when her son, Wes Moore, is elected and sworn in as our next governor. Joy, thank you so much for taking the time to chat.
Oh, thank you so much, Cheryl. I am so delighted to join and talk with you. We have few opportunities to really talk, so I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So folks know you from seeing you at a million campaign events, but they have no idea the incredible history and wonderful career that you've had. So we want to talk about you and your history. I want to talk about Wes. I want to talk about the campaign and so much more. So let's start with you, though. You're a child of immigrants from Jamaica. You got a bachelor's and a master's at American University. You had an incredible career in media and in philanthropy, in the foundation and nonprofit world, working for the NEE Casey Foundation, for the Council on Foundations, for Frontline Solutions. You've had your own company, JWS Media Consultant. You've done so much. So why don't you paint the picture first of your tremendously impressive professional life?
Oh, thank you. Well, so much of what I have done, yeah, AU was definitely my foundation. Um, it was broadcast journalism, it was print journalism, it was later on, film as that was sort of developing. So, and fortunately, I had that experience and that sort of expertise that I was able to once I was taking care of the kids on my own, I was able to work that and in many ways it saved me.
Yes.
Because I could do that professionally, as well as be mother to my kids.
So before we get to the kids and all that, talk about Frontline and Julian Bond and award programs and WMAL, and why don't you give us the trajectory of some of your media accomplishments?
Oh, well, I did once I went to New York. Actually, it was and it's so funny. Last night I saw my old producer who hired me on the spot when I first moved up to New York. I had all of this experience in radio, but very little in television. And she needed a writer, and this was when I worked for Essence, a television program. So, but I was hired, and for 5 years I was head writer and loved the experience. And from there, I was able to sort of parlay into a series. I worked with, as you said, Julian Bond for a few years as his writer.
Amazing.
Working with Susan Taylor was, I think a dream come true. And then we did series for NBC, and then more consulting work
Yes.
on other things. But
so you've also done a lot in the foundation and philanthropic nonprofit world. Why don't you talk about that and how you got into that and how that was satisfying for you?
Well, again, that was one of those, things that, when you're preparing for something, but you don't know you're preparing for it. A friend said there was a foundation in Connecticut that was looking for someone to go on their communication staff. And so I applied and said, I could barely spell philanthropy. That's what is philanthropy. And but I started working for them, and I basically built up their whole, how do you use media to advance the goals of the foundation, to tell the stories of the people that we serve and that kind of thing. So I was with the Casey Foundation after we moved down to Baltimore.
Yes.
For about 15 years.
Yeah. Amazing. So as you may or may not know, I used to run a charitable foundation as well. And what a great way to make a difference and and have an impact in the community. So good for you. We're lucky that you did it here.
Well, it was, I think, we had, I think when, because UPS, I don't know if everyone knows that, UPS is actually the parent of the Casey Foundation. It was John Casey who started the foundation, the philanthropy, and then named it after his mother, after, with the profits from the UPS group. So
So to
when
be
they
clear,
moved,
UPS, you're talking about the United Parcel Service.
yes,
I have
yes.
never known that. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
He was so well, his father had passed very early on in age, so he became sort of the provider, for the family. So his whole thing was for kids in the foster care system because his mom was able to keep them, out of the system.
Yes.
And so that's how it started, really. And so when they moved from Connecticut, they gave the foundation the option that where do you want to go? And you can go anywhere in the world. And we chose Baltimore
That's
because
it.
Baltimore, as it was an anchor, and we thought, a good place to anchor ourselves.
That's terrific. Well, let's pivot to you fell in love through your career and you met Wes Moore. So why don't you talk about meeting him and then tragically and avoidably, he died way too young.
Yeah, that period in my life was probably one of the happiest because we met as fellow journalists, in radio.
Yes.
And he was an anchor and I was a writer producer, and it was just wonderful. Then we eventually got married, and then we came back actually from California because he had received a job as a news director there. And then we were invited back to Washington, and that's when we moved to Tacoma Park.
Mhm.
And we had Little Wes,
Little Wes.
and then later Shawnee.
Right.
So that's where they spent their early years in Tacoma Park,
And you already had Nikki from a first
already
marriage that
from my first
unfortunately
marriage.
was abusive and addiction and some of the challenges that are all too common.
That we exactly. All those things. I think because kids are so central to everything that I have done in my life. It was because I didn't want her growing up in those kinds of, that situation. I probably could have toughed it out. But
Why
I
should
just
you?
didn't.
Why
Yeah.
should you? You deserve better than that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot that happens to a lot of women,
Yeah.
gonna, try to keep it going and, try not to do this and do that. But, you know, as you say, women deserve more. So that's what we did. And I found true happiness with Wes.
Yay. So your husband, Wesley, Wes on the campaign trail tells the story of his tragic death when Wes was just 3 years old. Why don't you just briefly share what that was about?
Well, his dad was the evening anchor for WMAL radio. And he complained pretty much all day. He was having trouble with his throat. And but he toughed it through, and he did his newscast that night, came home around midnight, had dinner, and by the morning he was feeling much worse. So and again, you don't think about this stuff, but he took an aspirin and he said it didn't feel like it had gone all the way down. So he went to the hospital. What we know now is that it wasn't that it didn't go down, but it actually was getting caught, in his throat because the esophagus was inflamed. And but they sent him home and said it probably would get worse before it got better. And by 6 o'clock that evening, he came stumbling down the stairs, which he couldn't breathe. At that time it had completely closed up. And ironically, again, it's one of those things, Cheryl, where if you know, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
In kids, it was called the croup.
Mm.
but because it is rare, more rare in adults,
Yes.
it was missed.
So it's a story of health inequities and discrimination and racism, and the way Wes tells the story. It was an African American man who was unshaven, and they just
Yeah.
made assumptions about drug use or other.
Whether he had insurance. Yeah, because he just threw on a shirt, which I have to this day. I have that shirt. I've kept it as a reminder of the inequities.
Yeah.
And he was primarily, he did some television, but he was a radio anchor. So his face was not as familiar. So and at that point he could barely talk. So, he certainly didn't go through a whole history of what he was doing and who he was and that kind of thing. But that shouldn't be necessary.
Of course not. Of course not.
People, but anyway,
you had three young children that you were faced with raising alone. You moved and were taken in by family who helped. And Wes also tells the story of your working multiple jobs and not having a job that offered health insurance until he was 14. Why don't you talk briefly about that, and then we'll move on to lots more.
Well, that job actually was the Anna E. Casey Foundation, where it was the first, where prior to that, it was all, self-pay, doing what I could. But it was because of Casey, for the first time after, Wes died, that, that we were able to have those benefits. And have the stability that, having a good paying job, a job that was so centered around families.
Yes.
And so I had lots of flexibility. So, in terms of the kids and their activities, they understood that. So that it truly was a dream come true.
That's great. That's great.
And everyone should have that opportunity in their workplace.
Amen to that. And those kids are so lucky for your fortitude and your extended family and the support that you got. So now let's pivot to talking about your son, Wes. I think a lot of people are curious. They see him today and they want to know the backstory because he references it a little bit, but we want to get the scoop from Mom. So first off, what was Wes like as a little kid? Let's start with when he was 4 or 5 years old.
Wow.
Was his room neat? Was he a good kid? Did he do chores? Just an idea of that.
No, he was not neat.
Okay. I think I would have predicted that, actually. Yes.
He was always a lovable kid. Because of that, I think, he was the kind of kid where everyone wanted to be around him. Everyone thought that all the kids in his class, wanted to be his best friend and thought they were his best friend.
Aww.
So they just sort of everyone took his time, and eventually I said, Wes, you got to make time for yourself.
Yeah.
You've got to figure out what it is, who you are, and what it is you can accomplish. There was one. I'm sorry, go ahead, Sharon.
No, that's right. I want to keep him at 5 years old. Then we'll.
5?
He's still 5 years old.
Still 5. Okay.
Okay. So, did he eat? We know he from the Kibbitz that I did before the primary, long before the primary. We know
tomatoes.
He eat tomatoes, right? Exactly. Did he otherwise eat his vegetables? Was he a picky eater?
Not picky. I mean, tomatoes is definitely
that was it. Right.
Something. Yeah, he would not eat. And then he had there was an aversion to some other spices and things.
Okay, that's
but
fair.
he but we were all, because our background is Jamaican.
Yes,
we love Jamaican food.
Yeah.
So whenever we could get that,
right. He'd be okay.
He would eat it. Yes.
So as a child, what did he think he wanted to be when he grew up?
Boy, that changed. At one point he wanted to be a lawyer. at one point he wanted to go into journalism, and his younger sister, Shani, I mean, it seemed like they kept, flipping back and forth.
Right,
One
right, right.
wanted to
She's
be,
an attorney, right?
she was
Yeah.
attorney now,
Okay.
back in communications. So they were sort of flipping back and forth.
Okay.
We
Did
call
he
them
do
Hansel and
chores?
Gretel.
Were there family chores?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
There were chores, and he did them reluctantly, but he was, pretty much, wanted to do what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
Um,
All right.
and
Now we're gonna fast forward.
fast forward, okay.
So Wes as a teenager at ages 14, 15, 16, he talks about that he was a handful for you.
Yeah.
And when the papers for him to join the military were put in front of you, and it's a laugh line every damn time he says it. And he says, at that point, my mom would have signed anything. So talk about what the challenges were a little bit as to what the challenges were and how the military was the right step for him.
Well, let me go into this by just a little story. His best friend, actually, Justin, tells the story that the guidance counselor in the school where they were called Justin in and said, "Look, if you don't stop hanging out with that Moore kid, you're going to end up just like him.
Wow.
You're going to end up in jail, and stay away from him." So that's the backstory. And that is, I mean, he did like stink bombs, it was sort of prankish things.
Yeah.
But the reason I tell that story is that it makes me so angry that people in power can write off a 12-year-old.
Yes.
And I would love to see him now.
Can you imagine?
But that
Yeah.
it happens so often.
Yeah.
People will come up with, this kid is good, this kid is bad, and sort of write them off and or help them. So but yeah, he did things like that, and it was at the point where I said that he needed to figure out who he was and what he wanted to do, and that's why I had threatened him with military school, for years.
Yes.
And finally, when I did it, I don't think he really thought I was gonna do it. But he went to like their summer camp, and even those few weeks that he was there, I noticed a difference. And it was just camp.
Yeah.
It was mainly playing and stuff, but they had classes in the afternoon. And it's through those classes they called me up when he came home and said, we have an opening in September. Would you be interested? And that's when I really had to, I looked at what I saw with changes already.
Yeah.
And if it weren't for my parents who actually put a mortgage on their house to help me pay for that first year.
Yes.
Then after that, I was not his favorite person.
Oh, I think you've made it up over the years. That's
yeah.
So when he came back from the military and after serving in the army and leave no one behind, which is his mantra on the campaign trail, but we'll get to that way later. He became a White House fellow. Then he went into investment banking. He was a Rhodes Scholar, and ultimately he was the CEO of Robin Hood Foundation, one of the largest and most important poverty-fighting nonprofits in the nation. Talk about the trajectory and the journey of all of that and what that was like as his mom to watch.
Well, I sort of gotten used to waiting, and watching Wes as he was going through Valley Forge. Because when he first, as I said, when he first got there, was not his favorite person. He hated it and tried to run away and all of that. And we made a deal. I said, look, they let him call, one night, and I said, okay, just do well the first year. That's all.
Yeah.
And then after that, you have a choice.
Yes.
And he did well. And I said, okay, do you want to come back to school here? And he said, nah, I think I'll stick around. He was getting a little bit of rank, he was playing basketball. And then every year there was a reason for him to stay. So he ended up being there what, 5, 6 years. And then when he was ready to graduate from high school, I thought, oh, okay, I know he's done now.
Right.
And schools were already, approaching him because he was a pretty good basketball player. And so, but he decided to stay there
Yes.
at Valley Forge for the 2-year, junior college.
Yes.
And I saw everything that he did, every transition that he made. I can see how it was a step towards what he's doing now.
Amazing.
Because that leadership that
Yes.
he got, at one point he was in charge of like 800 cadets, as a 17, 18-year-old. And then going on to Hopkins, he started a program at Hopkins. Then he got the Rhodes Scholarship.
So before we go to Hopkins, we just
Mhm.
have to talk about the community college, and just in his speeches, he talks about, Hopkins, all the prestige of that, but the ring that he wears, the school
Yes.
ring that he wears, is his community college, his junior college ring, and that was his
Yes.
foundation. And there are a lot of folks
Absolutely.
who would look at that and say, find that perplexing, and after all the prestigious things you've done, and yet he tells that story in such a compelling way.
Well, and that's it. It really was, because it showed him that he could be a leader.
Yeah.
And as I said, there were like 800 kids, some of whom were older than he was,
Yes.
that he basically had tactical supervision,
Yep.
over them. And I mean, to this day, there is a room on campus for some of the offices there. That is the Wes Moore room.
No way. Okay, that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. And
Yep.
people will say, well, how did you meet so and so and this and
Yeah.
that? During that period at Valley Forge, he met just about every single president, had lunch with them, sat down with them, talked to them. When the room was dedicated, Gwyneth Paltrow's grandfather, Buddy, was there. And that's when he first met Gwyneth Paltrow.
Nice.
So it was, he was not intimidated by people,
Right.
Schwarzkopf. I
Right.
mean, so he just grew up in a way that where power and you could respect the position,
Yes.
but not be intimidated by it.
Yes.
And you could
Yes.
learn by it. And he learned, and he became just an incredible listener
Yes.
during that period.
And still
So
has that skill. Just
absolutely
extraordinary. He was the
absolutely.
first African-American Rhodes Scholar from Johns Hopkins, which is incredible, and then White House Fellow, and then also has maintained relationships. The fact that one of the members of the Rhodes Scholarship Selection Committee was very deeply involved in his campaign from the very beginning. And he really creates relationships and continues them.
Yes, absolutely. That's and that's who he is. That's why, I think people wonder, well, how is he getting, all of this support from so many different
Yes.
kinds of people? That's because he really has relationships with them. It's not that, everyone's sort of jumping on the bandwagon.
Right.
He really has relationships that are deep and respectful. And so
Like with me. I mean,
you were one of the first, Joe.
I was. And it was because I knew him and loved him and trusted him and respected his vision and his values. And and I just knew he was authentic. And there were 3 criteria I had, and Wes was the one who checked all 3 boxes. And
wow.
so I was the first legislator outside of Baltimore City to endorse Wes in the fall of 2021, which was early.
Very early. I mean, like almost day one, show.
Yeah.
Wait, and I'm so glad you told me that, because I was wondering what is it? What, because that's for you in your position to make that kind of endorsement so early on, took courage.
Thank
And
you. Thank you. Well, I will share here super briefly, but this is about you. I had 3 criteria. One, and now this just feels mean because it's in the rearview mirror, who could beat Peter Franchot in the Democratic primary? Because I did not think Peter should be our nominee. 2, who could beat the person we expected, Kelly Schultz, in the general, in order to make sure we won and had a Democratic governor? And then 3rd, who would be an extraordinary governor? Those were my three
Wow.
criteria, and Wes was the one who could answer all three questions for me.
Wow.
That's why I endorsed him. So, but let's pivot
Well,
back to you.
thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks, Joy. It's obviously my enormous honor. So when Wes came to you and said, Mom, I'm thinking about running for governor, what was your first reaction?
My very first reaction was, wow. He was in this incredible job, in New York.
CEO of the
High
Robin Hood
profile
Foundation.
of
Yes.
right, high profile, good, even though I know it was so taxing going back and forth, for those, for almost 5 years.
Yes.
And
With Dawn and two beautiful young children at home.
kids, exactly. But he made that commitment because he never wanted to leave Baltimore.
Yes.
So that part of it I understood. Part of it was quite frankly, a little fear, because politics is so divisive and can be so nasty and sometimes dangerous. So there was some fear, but I also felt that, okay, I have to put my mother's side away for a second.
Yes.
And put forward my Maryland side. And I have seen him do, and Don, I think, says it best, the impossible he makes into the possible.
Yes, yes.
And he makes things better. I could tell you his name, which has come up sometimes, but and his dad and I sort of went back and forth on, we knew it was going to be Wes. And he wanted something small, so it's Omari is his middle name. But I wanted with 10-day, and because I just liked it for some reason. Now I think I know why I liked it, because it's Swahili for one who comes to make things better.
Yes.
And that he has always done throughout his life.
True.
And as a resident of Maryland, I think that he will be an extraordinary governor because he thinks boldly, he knows people, he makes decisions based on facts as opposed to anything else. And that's why he has Aruna Miller, as his running mate.
Yes.
She's extraordinary.
So I talk about how Wes makes decisions with his head and his heart. He leads with both. Talk about the best and worst thing of being on the campaign trail, because you have been to, I can't even imagine how many hundreds and hundreds of events with him.
Well, the best is meeting and finding, friendships and people like you, Shell. That is absolutely the truth. And it's just wonderful that there's so many incredible people and people who have, his back.
Yes.
Right. And who I know will never steer him wrong or anything. So that is the best part.
Yes.
The worst is I think about the hours that both he and Aruna and Dawn, spend out, and of course the team. They're incredible.
Yes.
But it's 24/7.
Yeah.
And
rolling.
Yeah. And I don't know how you guys do it. I really don't.
But with Wes, he gets bigger and happier and more energized. The more crazy long hours and events he does. He's pretty amazing that way.
Yeah, because I think he's feeling the momentum.
Yes.
And the momentum is driving a lot of his energy.
There wasn't always the momentum.
I know, but it was 1%.
When I endorsed him, he was at 1%, and so that's the slog. You gotta get past that.
Yeah.
The doubters in the early months and months and months who said he doesn't have any experience, he can't be governor, he's never been in politics before. How frustrating was that, and how did you tend to answer those folks?
Well, the only way I think that because they didn't know him.
Yes.
They didn't know his history. they didn't know his drive or appreciate. And I think for the, a governor is an executive.
Yes.
He didn't really need to have experience in the legislature, but he had Aruna, who
Yes.
is very experienced in the
Yes.
legislature. So, I think that offset, and people should have, sort of figured that piece out.
So you've referenced Aruna a few times. For somebody who's watching who may not be an insider, Aruna Miller is a former legislator and a transportation engineer and the former president of the Maryland Women Legislators Caucus, and has run for Congress and is just a wonderful, dynamic leader who is liked and respected, and is the choice and running mate for Wes Moore to be his lieutenant governor and his partner in running the state. So I just want to
I'm sorry.
fill in a
Thank
little
you.
bit. Absolutely.
Yes, thank you for that, because she does have all of that.
Yes.
In which yes. And yes, she is, they're an extraordinary team.
They are.
And I think will truly, be one of the most consequential teams to run.
Agreed.
Maryland.
So Wes, assuming he is elected, and we're not making any assumptions, we're all still
gotta vote.
Gotta vote. Wes Moore would be the first African-American governor of Maryland and only the third in the nation. And certainly there are some folks who have expressed hate or fear about that over the campaign and currently. Anything you want to say about that?
Well, I mean, I think if you truly love Maryland, that shouldn't matter. The fact that both, again, I will reference Aruna, that there was no team that could have brought more hope, more excitement to Maryland than that team. And if we are in a country that is supposed to be equitable and be for everyone, then there shouldn't be a question just because of someone's race or gender or whatever the case may be. So
exactly.
we just if that's your thing, then that's your thing.
That's your thing.
We won't worry about them.
So before I go to the next chapter, have you ever thought about running for office in your past, or would you in the future ever think about running for office yourself?
Not a chance.
Not a chance. That sounds like a hard no, Rex. You'd be wonderful. So, Joy, let's talk about the future. So what are you most excited about? Let's just assume for this conversation, and dear God, it better be the case, that Wes and Aruna are elected on November 8th, or whenever all of the ballots are counted. And what are you most excited about their leadership for the state of Maryland?
I am most excited about January 19th, when they actually take over, when they can, look and say, okay, these are the pieces that we have to deal with. This is, these are people we want to work on these, on these projects. And that I'm just like, I think that's going to be a great day, for them, for me, and, everyone who cares anything about Maryland, right?
Absolutely.
But I'm really curious to see, and where vision can become reality. I know the vision that Wes has for Maryland.
Yes.
I know what he wants to do.
Yes.
And I know what he will work 24/7 to get done.
Indeed.
So it will be fun watching that. And then with Dawn there, I'm really curious to see what her thing will be, what is she going to tackle? Because
so again, translating, Dawn Blythe Moore, whom I knew before I knew Wes, when she worked for our former Lieutenant Governor, Kathleen Kennedy Townsend. And she is brilliant and beautiful and accomplished in her own right. And the two of them are such an incredible duo. And then with the two sweet, smart children, and they're going to be such an extraordinary role model family, I think, for our state and our nation.
Yeah, and I wonder about, school, where they go to school now,
Yeah,
how that's going to, so I do think about how their lives are going to, to
sure.
change, and we just in the family just sort of standing by to say, okay, what can we do
Yes.
to make sure the transition is good for them as well.
Well, that goes to my next question. So, as I said at the very beginning, you're going to be the first mom uh, or first grandma of Maryland. Do you expect to have any agenda? What do you think your role might be?
Um, well, I will not have an official role because
Okay.
have not been, I'm not the one being elected, thank goodness. But um,
Maybe
if
if you
I
stay on
could,
his good side, maybe he'll hook you up somewhere.
um, I hope that people, perhaps, I worry about our kids. I worry about the fact that if everyone, and I look to, and you can maybe translate, the other Wes Moore,
Mhm.
that if that Wes Moore had had some of the opportunities and the people in his life that my Wes Moore had had, his story would have been very, very different.
True.
And
So for those
so,
who have not read the book yet, first off, buy it, get it out of the library, put it on your Kindle. The other Wes Moore is one of Wes's three books. They're all terrific. And I have read them all. One is about the unrest in Baltimore City. One is about making a difference and doing the work. But the other Wes Moore is a quick read, and it's so powerful and so important. And it's about a young man who uh, grew up in West Baltimore and ultimately is serving a lifetime jail sentence for having been part of a robbery where a bank guard was killed. And it was tragic. And Wes wondered what were the differences. We grew up in similar circumstances with single moms and all that, and with challenges in our childhood. And why am the other Wes Moore, this Wes Moore, a Rhodes Scholar and a White House Fellow, and hopefully going to be our next governor, whereas the other one is has a different path. So just for somebody who has not read the book, please continue, Joy.
yeah. Well, it's the difference is the opportunities that they had. The other Wes's mom, did her best. She graduated first in her family to graduate from high school,
Mm,
went to a junior college,
mm.
graduated and did so well. She was accepted into Johns Hopkins as well.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And yeah, but she couldn't go because of that year. And if I could remember the president, I wouldn't say it anyway, but the Pell Grants were cut.
Mm, mm,
So she couldn't afford to go.
yeah.
So that completely changed her trajectory
Mm,
as well as that of her sons.
mm, mm.
Um,
Have you
you
met
know,
her or spoken with
I
her?
have, I
Yeah.
have, yeah,
Amazing. Okay.
several times. Yeah. First time actually was on the set of Oprah's show.
Nice.
Oprah brought us both on, unbeknownst to the other. And
That gives me
so we met.
chills. That's
Yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
yeah. Well, she did those things, back then,
Yeah.
your car here,
Yeah.
all kinds of,
Yeah.
but yeah. So, and just wonderful. And now she is, forced to raise not only Wes's kids, but who now grandkids, and her other son, who was also involved in the robbery at the
Mm,
jewelry store.
mm, mm.
So, but and as Wes said, it's such a tragic story,
Yes.
because the officer who was killed was actually off duty. He had just had triplets, and
Mm,
so he was moonlighting, to money for the kids. So that family is shattered. The
yes.
other West's family is shattered,
Yes.
and
Mm,
and if we just got to stop that cycle.
yeah.
Just have to stop it. So
Before we pivot, and we're going to get close to wrapping up, it would be irresponsible for me not to flag that Mama Moore is also a published author, and you wrote a book called in 2018, The Power of Presence. Be a voice in your child's ear, even when you're not with them. Will you talk about that book, please? What caused you to write it? And it was after your son wrote and published what has become a tremendously best-selling book.
Yeah. Well, and it was because of him. You know, people would ask, so what was the difference? Or, you know, that what did your mom do and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
He would say, look, that's her story to tell, and so it, just after, but it took a few years for me to say yes, but said, okay, fine. But I also did not want to exceptionalize our story, because it was, the opportunity gap, all those things. So
Yes.
I told the publisher, yeah, I would, do it, but I also wanted to bring in the stories of other, especially single moms, and as it's turned out, people who are single, who are married, who are, grandparents, they're all sort of using the book because it's a universal, message.
Yes.
You have to be present, with your kids. You have to, and my kids accuse me of not doing this often enough. Put down the phone,
Right.
And then give them, sort of the attention, that they need.
Yes.
So that, and the lessons that will carry them through, throughout their lives. And so that's the part about being in their head.
Yes.
Even when you're not there.
So I'm curious today. Obviously, you love and affirm all three of your kids, your grandkids. Do you offer Wes feedback? Do you give him criticism about a speech, an event, a strategy, something, anything he's got going on now?
Yeah, I do. We give each other notes, as Shani will talk about. We just, everything was great. But let me give you one little note.
Nice.
To think about. And and some things they do, and some things I do, because they do the same to me. And
Yes.
so when you're raising your kids, you have to maintain a certain position. But after they're grown, your role is to be a friend.
Love it.
And someone who can be honestly, give feedback that is constructive and
yes.
and hopefully helpful.
Well, Joy Thomas Moore, I just adore you, and I feel so lucky to know you, and our state is just going to continue to fall in love with you. It is time now for the Fast Five. Five quick questions with 5 quick answers to let folks know other aspects of you. So,
okay,
here we go. So, question number 1, what is the best gift you've gotten from your grandkids?
A picture frame that opens up, that you can put things, items and things that they've made through the years.
Nice. Good. Question 2, what is the coolest thing, the coolest person you've ever gotten to meet because of being Wes's mom?
I gotta say Oprah.
I thought you were.
Yeah, that was pretty cool, going to her house and stuff. Yeah, that was okay.
Fabulous. Question number 3, if you were to write another book, what would be its title?
How to keep your cool when other forces are crazy around you.
I will read that book. Question 4, if you had a podcast and could have anyone you wanted as your guest, whom would you choose?
Wow. Okay, quick. After you, Michelle Obama.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you. And I don't belong in that same category, but thank you. And the 5th question, Joy Thomas Moore, the question that I ask everyone: what is your hidden secret superpower? What is a skill or talent you have, something you're really good at that most folks can't do?
That most people can't do. That's the part. I think my power is listening. And absorbing different things that have made up my character, from my mom, from my dad, from my kids.
Nice.
but the other people can't do. Everyone can do that.
I would venture to say that most people can't do that, actually.
Really?
Yeah. I think a lot of us could do better at it than we do. So
Oh,
that's your superpower. I totally grant you that.
okay.
I'll give you another moment if you come up with something else.
No, I think I'll stay with
I think that's a good
that.
one. Well, Joy Moore, the first mom, first grandma of Maryland, hopefully starting on January 19th of 2023. What a thrill to be able to chat with you. Thank you for your time, your leadership. Thank you for being such an extraordinary parent to all three of your kids, and especially Maryland's next governor, Wes Moore.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all you do, not only for Wes, but for all you do for all of Maryland. And and we are so, so grateful.
You're in love. Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.
All right.
Thank
Sending
you.
hugs. I will see you very soon.
Absolutely. Next trip.
Excellent.
Next stop on the campaign trail.
Excellent. Stay well. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.